Let's talk about what's wrong with ICPs. So first, what is an ICP? Well, an ICP is an ideal client persona, an ideal customer persona, an avatar, whatever you want to call it. The whole principle is that if you want your marketing to be more effective, you have to talk to one person, not just in general everybody. And that's really sound. That's based on principles. Like people don't connect with a message that's just generally thrown out there. They might connect with like a point, but generally they're going to resonate with somebody who's speaking directly to them about their situation instead of just general messaging. So if you want your marketing to be more specific and target one person to get a better resonance with them and get better results, you have to do it the right way. There are, I'd say, lots of problems with ICPs, but I'm going to talk about three. So number one, the first thing that's wrong with ICPs is that most people just make them up. So they just make up information about this pretend person. Sally, the controller, who is, in looking for fintech products to solve her problems. She's 33 and she lives in the suburbs of Chicago, and she, has a German Shepherd that she walks at 6 p.m. every day after she gets home. And then, she goes to the gym in the morning. Like, okay. Those elements can help resonate, if you are a fintech company targeting Sally the controller and you want to resonate more strongly, you might put pictures up of, a woman and her dog, and you might have a nice Chicago suburb backdrop to that. And you're like, okay, this is it. Like we've got all the elements here, and she's the right age, and let's make sure that it's the right time of day and everything. And this will be like a picture from her life. And she's like, that's me. And then she buys, right? But the problem is that Sally's a fake person that you made up. And it doesn't matter if you nail all the details, if the details are made up. And then, if you end up actually doing what you should be doing to make an ICP, which is looking at data, then you may find that it's not actually Sally from, Wheaton that, walks a dog in the evenings. It may actually be Charles that lives in, Kansas and is a grandparent who takes his grandkids fishing, on the weekends. Like, the problem with just making it up is that you're doing the same thing that you're doing if you're just generally spraying and praying with your marketing messaging, except you're doing it like even more wrong. So, the messaging, like if you post a picture of, the 33-year-old Sally in Wheaton walking her dog, like that might catch a 63-year-old man's, eye, but it's not going to resonate with him the way that it would if you showed a 63-year-old man, out on a boat fishing, with his grandkids, and you're like, you're in fintech, right? So you're like, oh, stop worrying about your problems and start enjoying your life, whatever. It's just some stuff that's going to show him, hey, this is what your life could be once you solve your problem with us. That's going to resonate more strongly because you're showing them who they want to be, not who they, supposedly are, or not somebody that they would, would want to look at. Not to be creepy. Sorry, Charles. So basically, you have to look at data. So to build an ICP, generally, you want to identify the top 10 to 20% customer segment for you. And so, to build an ideal client persona, you have to look at who your current ideal clients are, or your ideal customers. And the way you do that is generally there's the 80-20 principle. So the 10, 20, disproportionately small percentage of your customers make up the majority of your revenue, or of your enjoyment, or of your profit. And so usually you want to pair that principle with the RFM principle, or the recency, frequency, money principle. Those who most recently bought from you are most likely to buy again. Those who buy most frequently from you are most likely to buy again. And then those who spend the most money with you overall are most likely to buy again. So you take the top 10 to 20%, you look at those who buy most recently, most frequently, most just in volume, and you kind of pair this up. and you look at, okay, what are the traits that make them all kind of like, what are the patterns there? What do they all share in common? And then don't just stop there, because a lot of people will, and you find some things, but then you find out, oh, okay, turns out everybody across all of our customer base has these things in common, and that's part of why they're all our customers. So you look at the top segment. I then like to look at the bottom 10% or 5% or 20% or whatever, and see if you can find patterns there. And then maybe something in the middle, like 5% here, 5% there, or 10% across just the full middle. And then you take these patterns and you see, okay, what actually differentiates our top customers from our worst customers, our bottom customers, the we could live without this 10% customer base. And then the 10% in the middle, okay, what do they have in common across all of them? What differentiates them? And you could, try and maybe also tie it to like the things that differentiate the top 10 to 20%. Are these things buying signals? Are these things like things that actually influence them in their life? Like, okay, so these people at the top 10 to 20%, they're from a buying committee where, the leader of the buying committee is the CEO, or, they're from they're not on a buying committee, they are just one person, and they don't have a committee, and all of our worst people are the ones that operate on committee, or, so whatever it ends up being, like, those that impact their buying decisions. Hey, these people are actually all married, whereas these people aren't, or vice versa. So, again, whatever impacts their buying decisions, if that's part of the pattern, great. It's not always, but the things like, hey, these people all have the same, demographic kind of split. So all of our target customers in the top 10 to 20% are 35 to 44 year old women that live in Texas. Like, okay, sure, that's great. But try and find some of the other information as well. And then you want to actually look at sales calls with them. You want to look at emails with them, at, support tickets, anything you can to try and get a more full picture of who they are. Ideally, if you can, you actually want to reach out to these people and just have a conversation like, hey, you're one of our best customers. We really, really value you. And we just want to have a conversation, just learn a little bit more about you. Would you be open to sharing that? We really enjoyed working with you and would love to work with more people like you. What kind of things do you like to do? And then you could also send them like a little gift based on the conversation. Like, hey, here's a thank you for delving into your personal life. We know you didn't have to do that. So, you mentioned that you really like coffee. Here is a, 12-month subscription to this coffee box thing, whatever. Or just send them like a Onyx Las Lajas, Costa Rica natural processed coffee, and just, yeah. Anyway, basically do something nice for them, but learn everything you can so that you don't just have quantitative data, like the numbers and the metrics, like, okay, these people made this much profit for us, and they have these demographic pieces of information that align, this pattern. You also want to have qualitative data. Okay. So we've talked to them and we found that, most of them actually are really into like health and wellness. Most of them are really into nature hikes. Most of them, are really into football. Whatever it is, find out those patterns, both quantitative patterns, qualitative patterns, anything you can that actually separates that segment from the bottom or the middle, and then build your ICP around that. So the other things, that was a big point. Point number 2 is usually we're just making it up. We're not basing it on the data, but when we do base it on the data, we're looking at it completely wrong in how to actually use that. So we're like, okay, cool. Let's take this and let's start aligning our messaging with this. And they're reaching out to these people and they're like, okay, hey, because we know who you are, you need to buy from us now. And the people are like, I don't want to buy. I don't need to buy. Because generally 3 to 5% of people at any given time, even if they're your ideal client, are ready to buy, which means that like 95 to 97% of the people that you get in front of with your messaging are not ready yet. And so you have to understand, okay, I understand who they are now. I understand what makes them different from the people that we don't really want to do business with. But do I understand what their life is like because of this problem that I solve for them? Do I understand the pain that they're experiencing? Do I understand why they're buying from me? And generally, the answer is no. So, I mean, you might understand, like, okay, they had this problem, and then so now they're buying. But, like, what was that journey like? What happened between, okay, I know that I have a problem and let's solve it? Because especially in like B2B, it's not oh, I have this problem, I better solve it. And then, okay, now I'm ready to sign up for this $100,000 deal. That's not how it works. So you have this journey that they go through from basically like completely unaware of their problem to not only being aware of their problem, but having done the research to understand their problem, the implications of the problem, like what happens if I don't solve it? What do the solutions look like? Who provides those solutions? All of these different things. And am I the right person to make the decision to, solve this problem? Which sometimes yes, sometimes no. So in this case, if you understand those different stages, you can kind of separate yourself from the common throng that's just throwing all of these ads at people, and then all of these white papers and workshops and webinars and like, oh, buy. And you can meet them earlier before all that stuff hits them and just say, hey, do you have this problem? And here's what this looks like for you. Here's what you can expect from this problem. Here's what you're likely to come up against. Here are a lot of the solutions that people are going to pitch to you. Here's why those don't work. Here's why you should instead be considering this. Here's why this might be the best solution for you. Like, are you in this boat? Do you have these things that we've identified that our top 10 to 20% of customers, most of the people that we work with that experience the best results have these things in common, and they experience these things in this way. And if that sounds like you, basically just paint them a picture of what their life is like and show them that you understand the pain that they're experiencing. And if you can do that, then you're going to be able to get ahead of all of the people that are just for their wallets. They're only talking to them for what they can get out of it, not helping to develop a relationship and solving a problem for somebody, throughout the whole thing. So if you're that person that comes along and guides them through their journey of the problem they're experiencing, helps them recognize their pain and the implications of that pain and what happens if they solve it, what happens if they don't solve it. And then you basically can be there also when they're ready to make that buying decision. Then, even if they're not the only one making the decision, even if it's a really big decision made by a big committee, they're going to champion your cause because you were the one that helped them. And like, if you're the most familiar, if you're the most trusted, the most comfortable, you've provided the most resources for them, you've helped them the most, you've proven that you care, it's going to be an easy win for them to sell you to their team. And then if their team doesn't have to do the work and they trust the person who's championing your cause for them, then, you're basically a shoo-in at that point. So basically problem number 2, like you really need to be there at every stage of their journey if you want to have a better shot at getting their business instead of just showing up when they have their wallet out. So problem number 3 is when you have these resources, you have this understanding, who you should be talking to, what you should be saying to them and when you should be saying it. The third problem is not saying it in the right place or not being able to kind of put all of this together, right? So generally, if you have an ideal client or an ideal customer, what they look like, how their life is playing out as they're experiencing the problem that you can solve for them, even what to say to them. Well, the next problem then comes if you don't know really like what they're doing along the way to try to learn. So, in some cases they might be going and like, if they find this problem, they immediately go to AI and they're like, okay, ChatGPT, tell me how to solve this problem. Or in other cases, they're going to YouTube and they're like, okay, I have this problem. What does it look like? they go to Reddit. Hey, I have this problem. You're an idiot. Basically, there's going to be all of these different ways of solving a problem. So how does your ideal customer look for information about their problem? How do they do research? Are they going to AI? Are they going to, LinkedIn? Are they reaching out to friends directly? Harder to influence. Are they going to Google and searching? Are they reading articles? Are they looking on YouTube? Like, what does their journey look like? Not just in experiencing the pain and asking questions and everything, but where are they doing their research? How are they learning? Are they asking for recommendations on Facebook? Like, what does this look like? So once you have all these pieces together, you can be talking to the right person at the right time in the right channels, and your messaging just starts to align fully with their whole experience, especially, if you start remarketing to them in the right places with the right articles based on the things that they've been doing on certain channels. You're emailing them based on some of the kind of little opt-in signals that you've been placing out there. So you're like, okay, I gave them this information, they opted in. I sent them an email now that is the follow-up with the next step that they need to be able to make the decision. And I just knew that because I've done all this research about the people and what their life is like, how they go through this pain, what they experience, and the information they needed to make the decision. So basically, you can just guide them through this journey with the right message at the right time for the right person in the right channel. And that's how you build an ICP. That's how you use an ICP. And that's how all of this should work if you want to get more clients, get more customers at a lower acquisition cost, with increasing returns over time, because this is the kind of thing that creates a better experience. So if you have this, I refer to this really as pre-contact journey mapping. There's also post-contact journey mapping, which is what most customer experience professionals do. It's what most of them think about when they think journey mapping. And that's like, hey, once they've done business with us, once they're in the door, like, what do our processes look like? And that's fantastic. You should 100% do that as well. Make sure that you're taking very good care of the people that you have signed on. That increases retention, lifetime value, testimonials, like all the things. It's all good. That's really, I refer to that as like the nurture phase of my framework that I will talk about a whole lot more. But essentially, to journey map pre-contact, you really need to start with an ICP, and you need to start based on data, with a clear understanding of the problem and the pain that they experience, and then a clear understanding of where they go when they have that pain to do research and make their decisions.